We have narrations in our tradition that speak about love being a contingent factor to the completion of one's faith, where the Prophet ﷺ utilizes a construct in many narrations that say, "You will not enter paradise until you believe." And that construct is then followed by statements that talk about loving other people. You will not enter paradise until you believe, and you will not believe until you love one another. You will not enter paradise until you believe, and you will not believe until you love for your brother what you love for yourself. Imam Nawawi, rahimahullah, who is a scholar that is recognized across ideological interpretations of Islam, his 40 hadith collection is studied by people everywhere over generations. He says that the word brother in that hadith is not in reference to your brother in faith, but your brother in humanity. That you just have love for people. Love has a lot of nuance to it, especially in Arabic as a language. And the word in those narrations is hub, muhabba. Arabic as a language is very, very deep. And words are utilized, or words are usually built off of trilateral roots. So the word Muslim, Islam, Salam has the root Salama. And when you have shared roots in words, you can see there's a commonality there. The word Hub has the same root as the word for seed in Arabic, Habba. And the relationship between love, which is Hub, and a seed, which is a Habba, is that you can take that love from your heart and plant it in as many hearts as you want, but in order for it to actually rear and grow something, you gotta care for it, nurture it, cultivate it. If you just take seeds and just throw them in the earth, they're not gonna grow you anything. But the beauty of a seed is that it never gives you just a seed back. It always gives you more than that when you pay it attention. How will you love somebody if you don't spend time with them? How will you love them if the only engagement you have of them is through stereotypes? And they're not even good stereotypes, but they're the worst of stereotypes. And it's not even about the sake of the other person. Literally, the hadith is saying, you will not have complete faith until you just love people, man. Simply because they're people. And it's hard for people to conceptualize that. To understand that we come from certain lived realities. And I can understand where some people might have a certain antagonistic approach to the other, but most of us are in a space where we think things about people and we've never even met them before. We believe certain things about them. And it's in sharp contrast to the legacy of the last messenger of God, peace and blessings be upon him, who went out and engaged his community, who literally had individuals who treated him atrociously. And it didn't mean that he compromised on his sense of justice or made himself a doormat, but he would still make dua to Allah, Allahumma gfir li qawmi fa innahum la ya'lamoon, that, oh Allah, bestow your maghfirah, your mercy on my qawm, not my ummah, but my qawm, my locale, my people, my community. Indeed, they just don't understand. The Prophet had a deep love for the Meccan society and the people in it. He had a love for the people of Medina as well, but undoubtedly he loved the city of Mecca and all of its people. His coming was one that cast him out for what he did, but he didn't have to compromise on who he was in order for him to somehow be in a place where he still had affection and care for the well-being of the people around him. His coming was to not be silent in the face of inequity, nor was it to be acquiescent and just allow for things to take place, but his leadership was transformative and disruptive. He told people, do not bury your daughters alive. He spoke out against the ignorance of classism and racism that existed in the Meccan society. Messengers were not sent to people when they were doing great. Messengers were sent to people when they were doing things that were really screwed up. But even where he had that sense of purpose and he spoke out against the atrocities of society, he was still in a place where his motivation was based off of principles of real love and real compassion. And that's what's going to counter hate. I think a lot of Muslims, and I don't like to generalize, but what we find ourselves in is in a mode of reaction constantly. Our sense of self is consistently being identified to responding to people's worst conceptions of us, whether they're Muslim or not. So I'm not a terrorist, I'm not violent, I'm not oppressive to women. And in the flow of saying what I'm not saying what I actually am. What do you believe? What are your values? What guides your moral compass? And if you're in a space where your sense of identity is being dictated by somebody else that is crafting narrative about you, how do you use your voice and with strategy start to live your sense of values? And it's not always easy. In my country, people push this trope where they tell black people, well, if you just worked harder, maybe things would be better for you. And as a brown Muslim man, I have to be able to recognize my privilege as a minority, where I'm constantly going to be compared as the model minority to my black brothers and sisters, saying that, well, look at his people, they're doctors, they're lawyers, they're engineers, they're doing well for themselves, why can't you? There's other systems and structures at play that just inhibit the mobility of black men and women in the United States. So it's not just as simple as telling a demographic that is disenfranchised, maybe you need to work harder. And for Muslims who are in any part of the world where they're struggling because their voice is not amplified, because they're constantly succumbing to the worst stereotypes people have about them, you gotta be easy with yourself and have a sense of patience with yourself. That hope doesn't have to be understood as something that's fleeting. Tomorrow will be better, even where there's difficulty today, but in recognizing that sometimes it's not because of us that people believe certain things of us. And there's individuals who are in the spaces that they are, where the power dynamic is in their favor, that are casting narratives upon us that we just have to weather the storm until we get to a place where it's a little bit easier and better.